It is February 4th, 2026. A year ago today, I believe, was the 100th birthday of Russell Hoban, who wrote this book and many other books. Harvey's Hideout is the first Russell Hoban book that I ever owned. I belonged to a book club where you got a book in the mail every month when I was very little, and I loved that book club and was super excited when I got my book. And thinking back now with the grace of aging, I really do wonder how many lunches my father skipped so that he could keep the payments moving on the book club for me. Harvey's Hideout was definitely among those books, and so was Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, which I think is a book that most people are familiar with by Russell Hoban. And then there's this. As you can see, this is a very well-worn book, mostly because Marble ate it. If Marble can smell that I've been eating a book, she eats it. I've tried to trick her by putting the itty bitty book light on books I wasn't reading to see if that's how she was figuring it out. It's not. She knows if I'm reading or rereading a book, and she will just start to eat it. Ridley Walker is, well, arguably not a book for children. It's arguable because Ridley Walker begins on the 12th birthday of a boy named Ridley. And in the society in which he lives, your 12th birthday is a really important day. And so there are big fans of Ridley Walker who intentionally begin reading out loud Ridley with their family on that day, which we did when Claudia turned 12. So, I don't think you want me to read Ridley Walker because it is bugfuck insane. And it is one of the scariest, freakiest end of the world novels, or way past the end of the world novels. Ridley Walker takes place 3,000 years after the nuclear holocaust of Earth. So think about that. We'll go back to Harvey. And I'm sorry if it's just going to go in and out of focus. I'm practicing doing things like talking and doing more than one thing at a time. Because, as most people know, I had a significant traumatic brain injury in June. And since this week, I continually wrote that it was 1930 on everything I wrote. I decided I needed some practice. Plus, 100 years plus one day for Russell Hoban. It was a quiet summer afternoon, and Harvey Muskrat was building a raft in the backyard. He was hammering hard when his big sister Mildred stuck her head out the window. "Harvey, you stop that hammering," said Mildred. "I can't," said Harvey. "I'm building a raft." "Build it someplace else," said Mildred. "I'm writing a poem." "I can't," said Harvey. "This is where the hammer and nails and all my planks and logs are. Why don't you go somewhere else to write your poem?" "It's my house as much as it is yours," said Mildred. "And it's my backyard as much as it is yours," said Harvey. "You are being selfish and inconsiderate," said Mildred, "and I'm telling." "Go ahead and tell," said Harvey. And he went on hammering until his mother came out on the back porch. "Harvey," said Mother, "that is a terrible racket to make so close to the house. You really ought to do your hammering somewhere else." "So ha, ha, ha," said Mildred, and she stuck her tongue out at Harvey. Harvey stuck out his tongue back at Mildred. Then he piled his tools on his planks and logs and swam with them to the other side of the pond to finish his hammering. When the raft was finished, Harvey pulled it back across the pond and went fishing on the raft, where Mildred could see him from her window. When Mildred saw Harvey, she called, "Can I have a ride on the raft?" "No," said Harvey, "because this is not the house, and it is not the backyard, and no part of it is yours. It is my raft and nobody else's, so ha, ha, ha." "That is just what I would expect from a selfish, inconsiderate, stupid, no-good little brother like you," said Mildred. "That is because you are a loudmouth, bossy, mean, and rotten big sister," said Harvey, as Mother came out on the back porch again. "You will both have to stop that right now," said Mother, "and your father is going to hear about it when he comes home." When Father came rowing home in his boat and opened the front door, he heard about it. "Mildred," said Father, "it is true that Harvey is selfish and inconsiderate, but he is not stupid and no good, and you are not allowed to call him that." "What about what he called me?" said Mildred. "Mildred is loudmouthed and bossy," said Father to Harvey, "but she is not mean and rotten. And after supper, both of you will have sentences to write." So after supper, Harvey had to write, "I will not call Mildred mean and rotten," 500 times. Mildred had to write, "I will not call Harvey stupid and no good," 500 times. Oh my God, they would make this a banned book today. "Well," said Mildred to Harvey when they had finished their sentences and were standing in the hallway outside their rooms, "you see how much trouble we got into, and that is what happens with selfish, inconsiderate, stupid, no-good little brothers. Only when they have loudmouth, bossy, mean, and rotten big sisters," said Harvey. Both of them spoke very quietly, so that Mother and Father would not hear them. "All right," said Mildred. "You'll be sorry, because I know something you don't know." "What?" said Harvey. "There's a big party that I'm going to tomorrow," said Mildred, "and little brothers are not invited." "I don't care," said Harvey, "because I know something you don't know." "What?" said Mildred. "There is a secret club that I belong to that meets in a secret place," said Harvey, "and big sisters are not allowed to be members." "Well, I don't care," said Mildred, "because anything that you are a member of, I would not want to belong to. And any party that you go to," said Harvey, "I would not want to be invited to." Then Mildred and Harvey stuck their tongues out at each other, slammed the doors of their rooms quietly, and went to bed. The next day, Mildred tried on several party dresses until she decided which one to wear. Then she folded up the dress very small, wrapped it in plastic sandwich wrap to keep it dry, and swam off across the pond with her party dress in her mouth. Harvey watched her come out on the far bank and go into the woods. He waited until Mildred was out of sight, and then he pulled his raft across the pond, and he went into the woods too. "Call child services." That morning after supper, Mildred said to Harvey, "That was a wonderful party this afternoon." "We really had a good meeting at the secret club," said Harvey. "There were all kinds of refreshments," said Mildred. "Cake and soda and ice cream." "We had a cookout," said Harvey, "with all kinds of good things. We had hot dogs and baked beans and coleslaw and potato chips and root beer and roasted marshmallows afterwards. It was a lot of fun." "Who was at the secret club meeting?" said Mildred. "Different kids," said Harvey. "Nobody you know. Who was at the party?" "Nobody you know," said Mildred. "They were all very nice and and polite and considerate, and there were no little brothers at all. And there will be another party tomorrow. There's another secret club meeting tomorrow, too, said Harvey, and we will have a lot of fun again, with no big sisters there. The next day, Mildred came out of the house with a bundle that she had made, tying some of her things up in her yellow slicker. When she was ready to swim across the pond with it, she found Harvey waiting at the dock with his raft. On the raft was a bundle that Harvey had made by wrapping up some things in his poncho. "You can have a ride across the pond with me if you want," said Harvey. "I'm going that way anyhow." "All right," said Mildred, "but no following me to the party and no looking at what is in my bundle." "All right," said Harvey, "and no looking at my stuff and no following me." Harvey pulled the raft across to the other side of the pond, and Mildred started off on the path through the woods. Harvey waited until she was just out of sight, and then he followed her. He was coming around a bend in the path when Mildred jumped out from behind a bush. "I told you no following," she said. "I'm not following," said Harvey. "I was just looking for something I lost around here yesterday, but I can look for it later when you're gone." Mildred went off down the path again, and Harvey turned around and slowly went the other way. He went back to the raft and picked up his poncho bundle. And then he went into the woods and followed a trail to a den he had dug in the ground near the banks of the pond. There was a tunnel to the underground den, and the opening of the tunnel was covered up with brush so that nobody could find it. In the floor of the den was a hole lined with stones for building a fire in, and in the ceiling was a hole for letting the smoke out. On one of the walls was a calendar from the milkman with a picture of a muskrat baby on it. On another wall was a drawing of an Indian that Harvey had made. Out of the poncho, Harvey took an egg and 2 strips of bacon, a small frying pan that his mother did not use anymore, an empty milk bottle, and a stack of second-hand comic books he had traded for at school. Harvey piled the comic books in a corner of the den. Then he took the milk bottle down to the pond. He filled it with water and put some wildflowers in it. Harvey stood the milk bottle of flowers on the floor of the den in the place where it looked best, under the calendar. Then he fried the egg and bacon and had his lunch. Then he dug a getaway tunnel down to the pond so that the secret club would have a secret exit. Then he sat down inside and read his old comic books because there wasn't anybody for him to talk to and nobody for him to play with. His best friend, Harold Woodchuck, was at camp, and his next best friends, the Chipmunk children, had gone away with their parents for the summer. The Beaver children were all too big to be his friends, and they made fun of him because he was not good at cutting down trees. The Opossum children always laughed at him because he could not swing from a branch by his tail. The Rabbit children were all too fast for him to run around with. His mother had told him not to play with the Raccoon children because they knocked over garbage cans, and his father had warned him not to get mixed up with the Weasels. So there was nobody in the secret club but Harvey, and that is why there was nobody in the secret clubhouse but Harvey. Harvey thought about Mildred and the good time she was having at her party. She was probably having cake and ice cream, and the girls would be wearing party dresses, and they would be playing games. Harvey wished the little brothers were allowed to go to the party, but he decided that he would never tell that to Mildred, and he would never tell her that he was the only member of the secret club. Harvey thought about it for a long time, and after a while he began to cry a little, and he did not want to read his comic books anymore. So he decided to do some more digging in the den to make it a better shape and a little bit bigger. Harvey took down the calendar and the Indian picture, and he moved the milk bottle of flowers, and he began to dig. Harvey dug and carried out dirt until he was tired, and then he sat down to rest. While he was resting, he thought he heard something under the ground close by. Harvey leaned against the wall where he had been digging so that he could listen better. When he leaned against the wall, part of it crumbled away, and there was a little hole that Harvey could hear a voice coming out of. The voice said, "Have another cup of tea, Lucinda. Have some cake." Harvey knew who Lucinda was, and he knew whose voice that was. He put his eye to the hole, and he saw that on the other side of the hole was another underground den, right next to his. And inside that den was his big sister Mildred and her old doll Lucinda, who had one leg and her tail missing. They were both wearing party dresses, and they were having a party. Mildred had spread a cloth on the ground, and she had brought her tea set. She had real vanilla wafers for cake, but she had only pretend tea, and she had no pictures on the walls and no flowers and no comic books. When Mildred looked up and saw Harvey, she was very angry. "That is sneaking," she said, "and that is spying, and it is nasty. And when we get home, I'm telling." "I wasn't sneaking or spying," said Harvey. "I didn't know you had a secret place next to mine. I thought you really went to parties." "That is just plain stupid of you to think that," said Mildred, "when you know my best friend Lavinia Otter is away for the summer, and so is my other friend Rachel Squirrel, and the beaver kids are all too big for either of us to play with, and the opossums are not good for anything except swinging by their tails, and the rabbits are too fast to run around with, and the raccoons knock over garbage cans, and we're not allowed to get mixed up with the weasels. So I would like to know just who you think there is for me to have a party with, Mr. Nasty Little Brother." Then Harvey began to cry, and he rubbed his eye with his paw and got dirt in his eye and cried harder. Then he threw some dirt at Mildred and made her party dress dirty, and she began to cry. "You are so mean," said Harvey, "and I wasn't sneaking and spying, and I was going to give you half of my comic books and a calendar for your wall if you wanted one, and I have a cooking hole, and I thought the next time we could have a real cookout party, but you are too mean." Mildred stopped crying. "How come?" she said to Harvey. "How come what?" said Harvey. "How come you were going to give me comic books and a calendar, and you wanted to have a cookout and all that?" said Mildred. "Because I'm lonesome," said Harvey, "and there's nobody to play with, and I was going to be nice." "Would you make fun of my poems and my tea parties?" said Mildred. "Would you laugh when I talked to Lucinda?" "No," said Harvey, "I wouldn't." "Would you say mean things about the pictures I draw? And would you tell me that I do everything wrong when I cook?" "No," said Mildred, "I wouldn't." "Would you like to have a cup of tea with me and Lucinda?" "All right," said Harvey. "If we make this hole bigger, it can be a doorway between your place and my place." and we can visit back and forth," said Mildred. So Harvey and Mildred made their hole into a doorway, and they ate vanilla wafers and drank pretend tea with Lucinda. And the next time they came there, the secret club had 2 members, and Lucinda had 2 friends to talk to at the tea party next door. Happy birthday, Russell.